if your Washington real estate license has lapsed for more than 90 days, the Washington State Department of Licensing, also known as the DOL, requires you to retake the Washington Real Estate exam. To prepare for the exam, especially the 17 questions focusing on Washington rules, the Department of Licensing offers a study guide. You can download the study guide from the DOL website. The study guide outlines specific areas covered in the rules-based questions. These areas include the Washington Real Estate License Act, referenced as RCW 18.85. Another area is the Washington Administrative Code, known as WAC. The Real Estate Recovery Act is also included. And lastly, the Fair Housing Amendment Act. The Washington Real Estate License Act, RCW 18.85, covers a wide range of topics related to real estate licensing and practices in Washington state. Some key areas within this act include definitions of terms used in real estate transactions such as real estate broker, real estate salesperson, and real estate firm. It details the requirements for obtaining and maintaining a real estate license, including education, examination, and experience prerequisites. The Act outlines the scope of activities that licensed real estate professionals are authorized to perform, such as listing and selling properties, negotiating contracts, and managing real estate transactions. It establishes standards of conduct for real estate professionals, including duties to clients, ethical obligations, and prohibitions against fraudulent or deceptive practices. The Act specifies grounds for disciplinary action against real estate licensees, such as violations of the law, fraud, misrepresentation, or incompetence. It describes the procedures for investigating complaints against licensees, conducting hearings, and imposing sanctions, such as suspension or revocation of licenses. The Act addresses the establishment and administration of the Washington Real Estate Commission, which is responsible for overseeing the regulation of the real estate industry in the state. It includes provisions related to the handling of trust funds by real estate licensees, including requirements for maintaining separate accounts, record keeping, and disbursement of funds. The Act may also include provisions related to continuing education requirements for real estate licensees to ensure they stay updated on changes in the law and best practices in the industry. The Washington Administrative Code, or WAC, contains the rules and regulations adopted by state agencies to implement and interpret state laws. With respect to real estate, the WAC provides detailed guidance on various aspects of real estate practice and licensing in Washington state. Specific topics covered by the WAC in the context of real estate can include detailed requirements for real estate education courses and licensing examinations, including curriculum standards, instructor qualifications, and testing procedures. The WAC provides specific rules governing the conduct of real estate licensees in various situations, such as advertising properties, handling client funds, and disclosing conflicts of interest. It establishes procedures for filing complaints against real estate licensees, conducting investigations, and holding disciplinary hearings. It offers detailed guidance on the handling of trust funds by real estate licensees, including requirements for maintaining separate accounts, record keeping, and disbursement of funds. It defines standards for the appraisal of real property and the qualifications of appraisers in Washington state. It sets forth rules governing the management of rental properties by real estate licensees, including requirements for lease agreements, security deposits, and tenant relations. It provides guidance on fair housing laws and regulations, including prohibitions against discrimination in the sale or rental of housing based on protected characteristics. It may include specific rules related to real estate transactions involving environmentally sensitive properties, such as wetlands or shorelines. The Real Estate Recovery Act is designed to compensate members of the public who have suffered financial losses due to the dishonest or fraudulent conduct of a real estate licensee. This act establishes a fund, often called the Real Estate Recovery Fund, which is funded by fees paid by real estate licensees. When a person obtains a court judgment against a real estate licensee for fraud, misrepresentation, or other dishonest conduct in a real estate transaction, and they are unable to recover the full amount of the judgment from the licensee, they may be able to file a claim against the Real Estate Recovery Fund. The fund can provide compensation to the claimant up to certain limits to cover their losses. The process for filing a claim against the Real Estate Recovery Fund typically involves submitting documentation of the judgment, proof of the licensee's misconduct, and evidence that the claimant has made reasonable efforts to recover the losses from the licensee directly. The Real Estate Recovery Act includes provisions for determining eligibility for compensation from the fund, the amount of compensation that can be awarded, and the procedures for processing claims. It also includes provisions for replenishing the fund through assessments on real estate licensees. The Fair Housing Amendment Act, which is an amendment to the Fair Housing Act, prohibits discrimination in housing based on certain protected characteristics. These protected characteristics typically include race, color, religion, sex, familial status, and national origin. The Fair Housing Amendment Act makes it illegal for housing providers, such as landlords, property managers, and sellers, to discriminate against individuals or families based on these protected characteristics. Discrimination can take many forms, including refusing to rent or sell housing, setting different terms or conditions for housing, or making discriminatory statements or advertisements. The Fair Housing Amendment Act requires housing providers to make reasonable accommodations for individuals with disabilities to ensure they have equal access to housing. This may include allowing modifications to a dwelling or providing auxiliary aids and services. The Act also prohibits discrimination against families with children, including denying housing or imposing unreasonable restrictions on occupancy. The Fair Housing Amendment Act is enforced by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, and by state and local fair housing agencies. Individuals who believe they have been discriminated against in housing can file a complaint with HUD or their local fair housing agency. Violations of the Fair Housing Amendment Act can result in penalties, including fines, damages, and injunctive relief. Reviewing these specific laws and codes within the DOL study guide will assist in preparation.